So my inner voice, I would say, is about sort of experimenting and creating mystery and surprise. So I like to paint things that, people are going to look at it and just be surprised to find certain things in it. I like bright, intense colors. Color is important to me. I don't think of it so much as conveying emotion, although I know it's supposed to do that. But I like reds, and I like saturated colors, so I have to be careful about using too much just saturated colors. I have to experiment more with the more neutrals. I think people look at them differently, see different things. Mm-hmm. So I like the idea of creating mystery and awe and some ambiguity, of somebody looking at it and saying, now what is this about? So this is an encore career for me. I gradually segued out of my main adult career, which I was a psychotherapist, and I had a private practice in the Boston area for 40-some years. So I never even thought about painting. So I interviewed a lot of people, like 100 people over a period of 5 years. This TV show that I used to do, community TV show, called A Livelihood, New Adventures as We Age. And one of the people I interviewed, who had also an encore career, she was a German literature and language professor, tenured, and she left it. She always loved art, so she became an artist, and she invited me to her studio after the interview. And I just basically never left art after that. Now, another friend had just taken a class in encaustic, which is an ancient form of painting that started, they used it to preserve ships' hulls. Of course, first they used clear, but then they realized they could paint all kinds of things on the ship's hulls, which they did. So my friend had just taken a class in learning how to use encaustic, which is hot wax. So I did that for many years. So most of my older pictures are in using hot wax encaustic. I shifted from encaustic, although I still do some of it as an underlayment under some of my pictures. But then once COVID started, I did a lot of classes online all the time, still doing it. And although I started doing abstract work in the early days, once COVID began, I said, somehow I want to do work that has more meaning to me. And so I decided to start to work with the human figure. But I didn't want to do realistic representational work. I wanted to do the abstracted human figure and distorted and all. So I studied with a number of people who teach drawing the human figure, both stationary and in motion, actually. In my earlier phase of painting images of people, there were a few that were clearly had some meaning for people who were going through hard times during COVID. I don't start out thinking, oh, I'm going to paint a picture about let our children live. But I started out with these sketches of children, and then it just sort of evolved as I'm there in front of the canvas. And that has to do with looking at composition and sort of dynamism, and I like the idea of having one's eye go around the picture and seeing different things rather than having just one focal point. Other than creating surprise and mystery and awe in the pictures, I don't look at it and say, oh yeah, I see this narrative here, this story. But I like the idea of other people looking at my pictures and, you know, telling me what they see, which is often a story. And of course, they often see things that I never noticed or thought about. You know, I think there's a certain sense of wisdom in learning, continuing to learn at an older age, and especially doing something that is creative and that one can put out there in the public view. And even though, as I've explained before, most of my passion and enjoyment about doing this comes from inside me and the process, and not so much the end product. Even though, as I said, I like to look at all my pictures. I like having them around me, you know, like my children. So it's going to be hard to relinquish a whole bunch of them to the lobby of the TV station. You know, certainly would welcome anybody who's interested to come and see the show anytime during its open, January, February, March, a lot, and come to the reception so I could meet you. That would be great, on January 6th at 5 to 7 p.m.